Action. All right, we're good. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the progressive era slideshow. We left off, as you remembered, with the women's suffrage movement, 19th Amendment, giving the ladies the right to vote finally after 42 years. So now we're going to go into like the government part of it, cleaning up the government. Thomas, can you read the slide for me, please?
In many large cities, political bosses rewarded their supporters with jobs and kickbacks and openly bought votes with favors and bribes. Efforts to reform city politics stem in part from the desire to make government more efficient and responsive to its
Constituents.
constituents. It's just as immigrants' participation in politics.
Right. So does anyone know what a kickback is? Anyone tell me what a kickback is?
A party.
No, not a party. A kickback is money. So basically, when they're saying that the government was giving kickbacks to people in order for them to vote their way, they were giving them money. They also were giving them jobs. Like, hey, you come and vote for me, you come and support my legislature, and you'll have a job waiting for you in my office. A good paying job. Yes, miss? Yes. Because whatever is underlined is anything that's underlined in the slideshow is going to be present on your test, like always. And then it was the three goals were to reform the local government, which is like the government of Marietta, the state government, government of California, and reform elections. That would be the government of the United States. So what happened with the elections? They would buy the votes they would buy votes in exchange for favors and bribes. So again, the federal government would come in and be like, hey, you vote for me, I'm gonna give you a job in here, or here's a couple $1,000, or I'll support you in your upcoming campaign. So it was like a give and take type thing. So it was corrupt politics that was going on. And then we're gonna see here in a second where they're gonna start to clean these bad boys up. Looking good?
Yeah.
And again, all this is available on Canvas too if it goes a little quick. Red, can you start reading on socialism?
Yeah. Democratic socialist believes that the individuality of each human being can only be developed in a society embodying the values of liberty, equality, and solidarity.
Solidarity. Stop right there. Write that stuff down. Basically, guys, socialism is a collective ownership by all the people of the factories, the mills, the mines, the railroads, the land, and all the other parts that make money. So all these, before, the people that owned the land, people that owned the mills, people that owned the property, they made all the money. And the other people that were working meager wages with this, they wanted a piece of the pie. They're like, why aren't we making it? We're doing all the work. Okay, Red, can you continue on?
Yeah. These beliefs do not entail a crude conception of equality that conceives of human beings as equal in all respects. Rather, if human beings are to develop their distinct capacities, they must be accorded equal respect and opportunities, denied them by the inequalities of capitalist society, in which the life opportunities of a child born in the inner city are starkly less than that of a child born in an affluent suburb.
Stop right there. So, if your family is really rich, don't you think you're gonna have more opportunities than maybe a family that's poor?
Yeah.
Right. So this is what they're saying. Anyone that had money and was born affluent in wealth had a way better chance of surviving in society and moving forward in this period than a poorer person. See, nowadays, it doesn't really matter so much where in our community if your family's rich or your family's poor. It's more self-driven as you, the student. You could be the poorest person in this classroom and make it farther than the richest person in the classroom. But back then it wasn't really necessarily so, because the poor kids, in many cases, we'll see in the future slides, they didn't even go to school. They had no generational wealth. They were getting handed down houses that were worth $500,000. You know, when you were poor, 9 times out of 10, you were poor and you stayed poor. It was very rare that in this time that the poor kids would rise up over the richer kids. So that's what they're saying. They wanted to get on the same level as the people that made all the money, which is kind of like the basis of socialism. Just finish it off, right?
Where did
A democratic community.
Oh, a democratic community committed to the equal moral worth of each citizen will socially provide the cultural and economic necessities for the development of human individuality.
Yeah.
Decent education, healthcare, childcare, and so on.
Yeah. So not only was socialist people fighting for like equal treatment financially, they wanted equal education, equal health care, equal child care, and so on. Right now in America, can someone tell me one socialist practice that we have in America? There's many. There's one. Wouldn't you say the public school system is a socialist idea? Because it's to no cost to you and it's ran by the government. So that's kind of what you have to remember about socialism. The basis of it is it's a government-run corporation or entity with little to no cost to the people. So what else would you say in our society could be socialist? Mail. Maybe the army? They protect us and we don't really pay. It's ran by the government. Of course our taxes pay. Mail, same way. Good call. Corbin, you're listening over there. Love it. Alright, so let's move on. The slide. Right. Corbin, can you get me started at the top, the first 3 paragraphs, please?
Socialism is the collective ownership by all the people of the factories, mills, mines, railroads, land, and all other instruments of production. Socialism means production to satisfy human needs, not as under capitalism for sale and profit.
Hold on right there. So, under socialism, you only produce enough product for what you need. So, right now, if this classroom was, if we were running a socialist classroom, I'd produce enough clothes and enough food to feed us. That's it. We wouldn't need any more. But in the capitalist society, what do you do with the extra? What do they do with it? They sell it. They make money. We produce a mass amount of surplus, and then they sell it off for a profit in a capitalist society. Continue on.
Socialism means direct control and management of the industries and social services by the workers through a democratic government based on their nationwide economic organization.
Right. This next part's important. Under socialism, all authority will originate from the workers, integrally united into socialist industrial unions. So they formed unions. The socialist people at the time formed unions. In each workplace, the rank and file would elect whatever committees or representatives that are needed to facilitate production. So they would promote within. There wouldn't be a boss. Their bosses were within each other. There wasn't a big boss telling them what to do, making all the money. No, they elected people to facilitate production, and they made the exact same amount of money as everyone else. Socialism, equality. It could work in a utopian society. Let's do a potluck example. So say we had a potluck in here today. Everyone brought something. Everyone equally ate everything. It was good. You know when the potluck starts stinking is when, oh, Red forgot to bring the plates. Oh, you forgot to bring the cornbread. Oh, you forgot to bring the turkey. Say it's a Thanksgiving meal. Oh, you forgot to bring the gravy. So then that's when it starts breaking off, when people don't do their part. And that's why it's not gonna work. You know, it's like a group project. One person does all the work, everyone gets an A. It's just like a socialist project, but it's not gonna work if everyone doesn't do their part. And that's when it starts to break apart. You get it? Kind of a weird analogy, but keep on rolling. Keep on rolling. Casey, can you read that top part, please?
Socialist ideas also promoted the spirit of progressivism.
Can I ask one question before you move on? I don't mean to interrupt you. So this is the progressive era unit. What is progressivism? Anyone?
Something progressing?
Yeah, it's in the word. It's us progressing forward and correcting the injustices that was brought on by the Industrial Revolution. That's why they call it the progressive era. We did a lot in the Industrial Revolution, correct? I wasn't here for that unit. You got that unit, right?
Yeah.
All the machines, all the migrating to cities, the railroads, it was great. But there was like, it all came so fast that there were so many cracks that they left. And that's where progressivism is. Continue, Miss, please.
Socialists never attacked the large following, even among workers, but their criticism of the industrial economy gained increasing attention in the 20th century.
Right. So, this is something you wanna write down. American socialists condemned social and economic inequalities, criticized limited government, and demanded public ownership of railroads, utilities, and communications. So the railroads, moguls own the railroads, the richest people. Utilities, rich people. Communications, rich people. They felt, and they worked for all these entities for little to nothing, 15 hours a week, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week. So they're socialists. Since I am doing all this, and I am making you all this money, and I'm the one putting in all the hours, I want a piece of the pie, the same pay, the same benefits that the rich people are. They also campaigned for tax reform, better housing, factory inspections, and recreational facilities for all. Housing. Most of these people lived in a 1-bedroom house. They got like 5, 6, 7, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, one house. Maybe not even a bathroom inside the house. Little to no running water. But the rich people, they live great. So they argued for fair housing, factory inspections, better taxes, because they were getting taxed when the rich people were paying little. And it comes down to child labor. We kind of touched on this. Okay, Z, can you read that for me, please, sir?
Child labor. The maiming and killing of children in industrial accidents made it inevitable that efforts to secure child labor laws should be our first venture into the field of state legislation. The National Child Labor Committee organized in 1904.
Right. So maiming. Does anyone know what maiming means? Yes, sir. Yeah. Some kids were losing an arm, a foot, a finger, maybe many fingers.
Wait, what?
'Cause-
It lost like.
Yeah, they were getting hurt in these factories. They were running these big machines that were supposed to be skilled operators were supposed to be working these machines, adults. And then you got like a 7-year-old doing it. Look at this guy. Not more than 7 or 8 years old. What's up?
And when they get hurt and they get sent home, they don't get paid or anything.
No, that's the crazy part. So, how many, show of hands, who has a job? Who works? Okay, what happens when if you slip and fall at work, you hit your head, and you split your head and you have to get stitches? What happens? What do? Okay, it's never happened to you. They send you home, they send you to their doctor, they pay for the medical expenses, they're like, oh, we can't wait to have you back, and they take care of you, right? It's called,
They still do that if you don't have
yeah, workman's comp. We have all these benefits that protect us now. No, not then. More than likely then, if you got hurt in one of those factories, not only did they send you home and not care, go find your own medical treatment, they wouldn't have you back. They didn't want a clumsy, incompetent person coming back. So if you got hurt doing their job, you'd be fired. You wouldn't even get your job back. It's not like when you're better, come back. No, dude, we can't have you getting hurt on the job. You're clumsy, obviously, get out. That's how it was. No repercussions. So the child, and let's take back to the children now. So these guys would wake up at like 4:30 in the morning, have to not drive, they didn't have cars, well, some of them did, or go in the carriage, horse, whatever, to the factories, arrive around 5 o'clock, and they'd work from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, sometimes 8 or 9 o'clock, till sundown, for like cents on the dollar. And people begin to look into this and be like, what the heck, this is not fair. So then we started a labor committee that started organizing in 1904. That was brought on by Roosevelt. We'll see over here on this next slide, our child labor laws. Jacob, can you read the top one, the white part, please, for me?
Okay. Laws passed over many decades, beginning in the 1830s by state and federal. I can't read it.
By state and federal governments.
Forbidding the employment of children and young teenagers except at certain carefully specified jobs. Child labor was regularly
Condemned.
I don't know, walk closer. Maybe play the series. In the
19th
19th
century.
century by reformers and reform authors. See David Copperfield.
Don't worry about that part.
But many businesses insisted that the Constitution protected their liberty to hire workers of any age in several cases in the early 20th century. The Supreme Court agreed
Can somebody else read it? Like,
Yeah, declaring federal child labor laws unconstitutional. Sorry. So basically right here. So they were arguing, they had the audacity to argue that saying that kids couldn't work was unconstitutional because it took away their right to work. Was that ridiculous? The child is protected under the Constitution, but so eventually, take this down. In the late 1930s, the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act was upheld by the court. This law greatly restricted the employment of children under the age of 18 in manufacturing jobs. So they made some headway that kids under 18 couldn't work in the factories, manufacturing jobs, but they still were child laboring these guys out to other people, like other jobs too. So right now, what's the age that you can work in California? 16?
16.
And what do you gotta get from your school?
work permit?
Yeah, because the school's not gonna let you work. Like say you're failing your classes, they're not gonna let you work. So you not only do you have to be a good student, but you have to be 16 years old to work any job. The National Child Labor Committee, an organization dedicated to the abolition of all child labor, was formed in 1904. So now we got the National Labor Committee, and they're saying all child labor. All child labor. And managed to pass one law which was struck down by the Supreme Court 2 years later for violating children's right to contract work. Does a child have a right to contract work? Does your 7-year-old brother or sister go walk around, I'm gonna contract me some work today? No, they don't even care. Where should kids be during the day?
School.
Correct.
Playing.
Correct. The playground. I'd even say the playground, not a factory, but school, yeah. In 24, Congress attempted to pass a constitutional amendment that would authorize national child labor law. The measure was blocked, again, by people that just wanted to pretty much slave out little kids. And the bill was eventually dropped. It took the Great Depression to end child labor nationwide. Adults had become so desperate for jobs that they were the ones that would get the jobs over the kids. It took one of the greatest financial crises in American history to end child labor. Because jobs became so scarce during the Depression that men would fight over jobs. They would have lines of people lined up, men, probably hundreds of them, and they had a man that was behind the fence that would say, you, and they picked 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of this group of hundreds of men. And that was the job for the day. And then they'd just go home. Sorry guys, I didn't get my job today, we're not eating. So it took remember this, it took the Great Depression in order to end child labor issues. President Roosevelt, 1938, signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which, amongst other things, placed limits on many forms of child labor. Just remember, Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, put limits on forms of child labor. And then we move on. Alright, and we're going to come into Teddy Roosevelt, and that's what our video is going to be on today. But first, I wanted to touch on some stuff with him. Roosevelt really is the president that turned the president to what he is today. He was the first modern-day president. He used his platform to do good for our country. Roosevelt saw the presidency as a bully pulpit. Bully pulpit is basically a spot where he stood there and he talked about issues that we were going to change in America. He wasn't a bully, but he was the man that talked and actually talked stuff and was going to follow through with it. From which he could influence the news media and shape legislation. I have a list and I can't say that word. If big business victimized workers, then the President Roosevelt would see it that the common people received what he called the square deal. Like we'll see later in history, Roosevelt came out with the New Deal that helped take the country out of the Depression. First, Teddy Roosevelt came up with the square deal called the 3 C's. This is what you're going to need to remember. C number 1, conservation of natural resources. So I don't know how many people have been to Yosemite, Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, any national parks. Y'all been to some of those before? They are possible and were made preserved by this man right here, Teddy Roosevelt. He's the one that wanted to conserve the conservation of natural resources because at the time, wood, timber was a big commodity in America because everything was made of wood. So they were deforesting. Have you guys ever been to the redwoods or Yosemite? You see these massive trees and forests, how beautiful they are. These cats we're trying to cut that all down for building. Imagine.
What were the C?
Conservation. So the conservation, the protecting of these national forests, these national treasures, like Yosemite. My God, it's beautiful. If you've never been there, go. Take your kids one day. Tell your mom this summer we're going to Yosemite. This term was used to describe the various program reforms sponsored by the president. C number 2, control of corporations. Corporations were running rampant. Monopolies. Remember Rockefeller? How he put his business right next to another little business and drove them out of business, creating monopolies. So he wanted to curb the power of large corporations called trusts. Trusts are the same as monopolies. So he wanted to get rid of all the trusts. And he did a lot, over 1,000 in his presidency. He went after these big businesses. And then he wanted to give back the power to the small businesses. That's all he was trying to do. By regulating the big businesses and cutting out the monopolies, he was thus helping the small businesses being able to flourish in an equal and fair economy. Sound good? And the last C from his 3 C's, the square deal, consumer protection. Remember our last time we convened, we talked about the meat packing conditions and the food conditions at the time? He is the one that gave the 1906 Meat Plant Inspection Act, which made it where the meat was stored correctly, there was no rat poop on it, and it wasn't bad by the time it got to the consumer, because it was making everyone sick. Thousands of people were dying because of bad meat. He also, in 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act, which made everything had to be labeled, remember? So anything expired would not poison you. Like you get a gallon of milk, oh my gosh, we finally got our gallon of milk, but it expired 10 days ago. You think that milk would taste good?
No.
Heck no, that'd be gross. Or eggs, when you crack them, they're rotten, stink up your whole house. So basically, the Pure Food and Drug Act protected the people from, and assured the people that they were going to be getting food that was still good, still ready to eat, and wouldn't make them sick. He was quoted saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." You know, what do you think he meant by that? Speak softly and carry a big stick. I think what he meant was, your opinion, talk your opinion, but be able to back it up. And that's what basically he did. He spoke the spoke and he backed it up. He also said, "It is the duty of the president to act upon the theory that he is the steward of the people." What's a steward? It's like a protector, a steward. Steward of the people, like a protector of the people. And to assume that he has a legal right to do whatever he needs to protect that demand. So he was telling the people, I have the right to do what I gotta do to protect all you guys. Unless the Constitution or the laws explicitly forbid me to do it, him to do it. So he wasn't gonna break laws. There's a lot of corrupt politics nowadays. They're breaking laws, but everyone's not really seeing it. This guy said, I'm gonna do what I can do in the restraints of the Constitution to right these wrongs and to protect you guys. And as you'll see in this video that I'm gonna show you right now, he did a great job. All right, video time.
Yay!
Yay. Do I know how to record it?